Greetings. This is Rosalind Parks with National Network View News. On tonight's broadcast, NNV Weekly medical contributor Dr. Akili Muhammad will be on to discuss whether vaccination is the best medical solution to combat the rise in COVID-19 cases and whether unvaccinated people are the cause. We'll also speak on how the US government and mass media is pushing vaccines while simultaneously keeping the public blind to possible inexpensive treatments for COVID-19. Finally, we'll end with talking about how stress and its effect on our immune system plays a major part in overcoming the symptoms of COVID. Before we get into the top news, let's do a recap of the current events we've recently covered. NNV News anchor Willie Muhammad's monthly contributor, Dr. Gary Clark, along with Brian Turner, shared their thoughts and insight on the upcoming Universal Hip Hop Museum scheduled to open in 2023.
So, do you believe that such a museum is even needed?
I think the beauty of any museum is that we get to tell the story of people as they experience life, especially for African Americans in inner city, as we understand hip hop being born in the Bronx, but taking over the country. And now you can't turn on the TV show. You can't watch a commercial. You can't go into a store and buy an item or be a consumer without hip hop in some way, shape, or form being a part of that experience. So I think the hip hop museum will definitely go into a point of reference for individuals who want to know more. But I think specifically it even gives us an anchor institution in terms of the African American experience in the 20th century, post the civil rights movement, post slavery, where we begin to actually tell our own stories. And if we think about historically, that was one of the things that was lost through slavery, that we stopped telling our own stories. So I'm very, very excited about this opportunity, just like with any museum, whether it be the National African American Museum in DC. Anytime Black people get to tell their own story, I'm for it.
Willie Muhammad questioned Dr. Gary Clark and Brian Turner about their views on whether the passing of the legislation to make Juneteenth a national federal holiday was more about symbolism or substance.
The popularity of Juneteenth seemed to dramatically increase from our perspective over these last 3 years. Have you all noticed the same? If so, why do you think it has become so big?
Well, it's taken on the greatest significance because it is indeed important, and it's now on it's now part of it's on the national menu and part of the national discussion. It's needed and necessary. It was stated by some recent academics who said, "Wait a minute, part of the narrative that we hear about Juneteenth is not as true as you may think. That many of those who were enslaved during that period in Texas actually knew that they were free, but they were held captive." And were not allowed to be free. And so when the general came in to let them know, the general came with guns to tell them that you need to free these people and you need to enforce the law of the land. But getting back to your statement in terms of where we are and what the impact of Juneteenth is highly important because symbolism has value in American society. We recognize the nature of symbolism.
Contributors Dr. Gary Clark and Brian Turner also discussed the recent uptick in applications and student enrollment at historically Black colleges and universities.
What do you attribute the increase in enrollment at HBCUs to?
The Donald J. Trump.
I figured that.
But I only give him that credit because I think he's helped to awaken an understanding amongst our community that we actually have to support our own entities, right? And I say that in the grand scheme of things that for so long, and I remember my own grandmother explaining to me how growing up, she was told that white ice was colder. And in my mind, as a graduate of Isidore Newman High School, where I understood that ice freezes at the same temperature, no matter who puts it in the freezer, it baffled me that this could be told to people and they would either believe it or accept it. And so I think we found ourselves in a very precarious, but also profitable moment as HBCUs that we can come to understand that it is so important for us to provide a learning environment, but also a social and cultural experience that our young people will actually really appreciate.
On Sundays, I Have a Testimony, William Muhammad's guests Sister Kiana Muhammad and her daughter, Sister Aliyah Muhammad, expressed the beliefs of being educated in a school started by members of the Nation of Islam, Aliyah's MGT drill team performance, health challenges, and meeting with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
What are your thoughts about that whole meeting, and even the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan praying for you and your family?
When I go think about that moment, I'm just sitting as she was talking. I just went back to that moment years ago in 2018, sitting in this room, and I try not to cry, but it was, I can't even put it into words. It's hard to put into words of how I felt and how the rest of my family must have felt. It just, if I can impossibly possibly put it in one word, it'll be grateful. It'll be thankful. I'm just thankful and grateful for that opportunity and to be able to be in front of and be prayed for by the man of God is a one in a lifetime opportunity, obviously. And I was just, I can't even really describe how I felt at that moment.
Covering for NNV News anchor Robert Muhammad, I sat down with our contributor on education, Tony Muhammad, to discuss the recent comments by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who equated the teaching of critical race theory with teaching students to attack police officers. Governor Ron DeSantis recently added fuel to the discussion about the banned critical race theory curriculum. He equated the teaching of CRT with the teaching of students to attack police officers. Is DeSantis's political rhetoric a dog whistle tactic to support the whitewashing of the school curriculum?
Absolutely. And there, where you're dealing with, see, I'm actually thankful for that type of exaggerated discourse by Ron DeSantis, because we have to reflect ourselves when we're exaggerating historical facts to prove what we argue in terms of Black history and our own condition in America and what we experience in the course of world history. We can't deal with exaggeration. Ron DeSantis is absolutely dealing with exaggeration, and exaggeration is a lie.
I also had weekly contributor Charles Muhammad back on to educate us and provide us with tips from the book, How to Eat to Live, and the benefits derived from drinking pure milk and eating pure wheat products. How do we get pure milk products? Most of us have grocery stores or convenience stores. The milk is already pasteurized and in a jug for us. Is there any way we can get something that is pure and better for us?
Yes, the milkman is making a comeback. So you could sit tight for a while, because even though certain white people have a problem with the critical race theory, they are, fiending for milk nowadays. So they are bringing back milk into the communities. I mean, the pure milk, because there's some of us who remember when milk was delivered to our doorstep and we have to set our bottles, right? That was a universal delivery system. It was essential for it to be in our diet. Now, many of us feel that the intolerance level for lactose in the Black community is up to 80%. That's a myth.
Cryptocurrency enthusiast Vernon Muhammad updated us on what was new on the blockchain, wealth building, and expressed some different ways we can begin to educate ourselves on the digital currency movement. Now, there is a lot of FUD, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt about cryptocurrency lately. What should we pay attention to, and what should we ignore?
Right. That is exactly where we need to put it. There's something called speculation, okay? And in just about any market, and again, I'm not a financial advisor or anything like that, but whether you talk about real estate, whether you talk about stocks, cryptocurrencies, whatever, they're speculative. People have adopted the term, oh, it's volatile. Yes, it changes. Things go up, things go down. And when you put the focus on speculation, you're pretty much gambling. So instead of putting the focus on the gamble, on the quick payoff, on, how can I strike it rich or hit it big, the focus needs to be directed to blockchain technology, which is what cryptocurrencies or these tokens represent, the technology and how the technology is entering into the business world now and what opportunity that will open up to us.
NNV News anchor Tariq X was joined by NNV contributor Nina Shabazz Muhammad, who discussed food deserts in the Black and Brown communities across America, as well as the lack of healthy food options available.
Going back to what you were saying about our health not being a priority, then why are there an abundance of fast food restaurants in these food deserts?
Because cheap and processed food is it's easy to make. It costs nothing to make. You can put so many different fillers in it and call it food. When you go out of the country, you travel out of the country, not too long ago, Ireland, they labeled, I believe it was a bun or the bread from Subway. They said this is not considered bread in our country. And
Wow.
they did not allow bread to come. And so when you go outside of the United States, you see a lot of countries having a severe backlash against allowing things to be imported from the United States, because the health of their citizens are at a much higher priority as opposed to, the almighty dollar cutting costs.
Nina Shabazz Muhammad also highlighted Allah's Kitchen, a vegan restaurant located in Rochester, New York, that is doing the work to help combat the lack of healthier food choices in disenfranchised communities.
Do you feel like, Black people are opening up these vegan restaurants and making it taste better, and that is kind of causing people to start to demand more from our community leaders?
Absolutely. Even when you look at the fact that, at one point, this, people were looking at veganism as kind of maybe, a fad or something like that, or something that will kind of fade away in popularity. It has proved to only grow in terms of popularity because I think that people demand it. And so once you see a lot more establishment, when you see chain restaurants such as TGI Fridays offering Beyond Meat burgers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think they see that this is the public has spoken. And so I think that when you see this trend continue, you start to see celebrities, come in, people of notoriety come in and support these establishments. That's Umar Johnson.
Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. Coming up, Dr. Akili Muhammad will provide us with his medical update on the rise in COVID cases and the deaths. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Asiatic Minds. Online education. Helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness, as well as the greatness of our people. And upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. Call now, 502-219-4848.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
The hashtag Bank Black social media campaign made strides not only in revolutionizing how we bank, but also how we think. The movement inspired thousands of African Americans across the country to transfer or deposit millions of dollars into Black-owned banks. These are banks that will invest in urban communities, employ African Americans, support Black businesses, and inspire Black home ownership. This is a very proud moment for our culture as we are taking small, but significant, steps towards building Black power through Black wealth.
Thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Clifton Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
As the number of COVID-19 cases and deaths continue to rise, we should question whether unvaccinated people are the problem and whether vaccination is the solution.
Reopening is cause for celebration across the U.S. as COVID case counts and deaths dip to their lowest points in the pandemic. But in the American South, there's concern below average rates of vaccination, coupled with the highly contagious Delta variant, could lead to a brand new wave.
Does the Delta variant change the equation?
It does change the equation. The virus spreads more rapidly. You have a much greater chance of getting it. So the vaccine is your one surefire way of preventing getting sick.
Lower vaccination rates have been driven partially by hesitancy and partially by a belief that the pandemic is over. In some areas, the number of vaccinated individuals is abysmally low, risking a virus resurgence.
With us this evening to speak on this topic and more is NNV Weekly contributor, Dr. Akili Muhammad. Greetings, sir.
Greetings, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. What are the COVID-19 cases looking like in America and around the world at this time?
Well, that's very interesting. You know, I was looking at the Worldometer today, and the information that is up today is from days. You know, it's a lag in the actual report. So the date you can find when you go to something like the Worldometer, and there are days in between the actual information and the date that you are actually going to find it. And it literally said that in America there were 0 new cases, but yet there was an article that somebody sent me as well today that spoke about the rising cases in Missouri. And they're extremely worried about the increase in cases and the fact that society is back open. But as we just heard in that clip, this article similarly was trying to say that unvaccinated people are the cause, or potentially are going to be the cause, in this new increase in number of cases and deaths and all the other sequelae that come from it. But I want to remind everybody, I think it's very important for you to continue to come to NNV News, because when you come to NNV News, you're listening to people that have their ear in the street as well as their feet in the street. So you're getting information that's grassroots information. We cannot continue to trust a media that is speaking for the powers economically and not for the people. And I'm saying that for a very serious reason, because if we are going to blame the non-vaccinated people in this country, then what is the explanation for where this Delta variant came from, which is India? India started their vaccination program in January, and in April, their cases went I think it was May, their cases went absolutely crazy. They went from one of the lowest countries to one of the worst countries in the world after their vaccination program. So please don't continue to listen to information saying that unvaccinated people are going to be the cause for this new rise in cases. There are questions, and many scientists around the world that are highly concerned that it is the vaccinated people that are going to cause an increase in the upcoming cases. And so I'm saying all that as a warning. In reality, the cases are high still around the world in many countries. There are still many, many deaths around the world. And we have to pay very close attention to where we live and try to get the most accurate information that you can to predict what it is that you're going to do in the upcoming days, weeks, and months.
Now, Dr. Akili, with the VAERS reporting system, those who have been vaccinated, some of the reports have actually stated that that they have received or been tested positive for the COVID-19 virus. What would you attribute that to, if not for the vaccination? What else could it be?
Yeah, so, recently I have spoken with many of my colleagues around the country, and those that are working in emergency rooms and ICUs are saying that they are seeing more cases in their hospitals of people that are having vaccine adverse events, as well as people that are vaccinated getting infected with the COVID-19, way more people in that category than they are finding people that are just getting infected. And so again, we really have to be careful with the source of our information. The mainstream media is pushing all of this rhetoric about non-vaccinated people and the problems that we're causing. But in reality, as the question kind of alludes to, if the majority of doctors around the country are become more and more wary about what they're seeing about this vaccine, and there also are still a large percentage of healthcare workers that are not being vaccinated, then that speaks to something that has to be investigated. Right now, my conclusion, based on the information that I'm reading and the people that I'm talking to around the country, my biggest concern as we speak is what may happen to me being in the company of a vaccinated person. It seems as if there may be some type of decrease in immunity after the vaccine. And a lot of these doctors are telling me it's around the second shot, a little after the second shot in the 2-shot vaccines, of course, Pfizer and Moderna. And in the Johnson & Johnson, it seems to be somewhere in the midst of 2 weeks to a month after the shot, where these people are becoming infected. And so we've seen it recently with the basketball player CP3 for Phoenix. We saw not too long ago with the Yankees. And there are other examples around the country where vaccinated people are becoming infected. And so if a vaccinated person is infected, then that also means they can be infective, meaning infected, they got it. What was the purpose of a vaccine if you still got it? And then as the studies have said, and as these companies have given their own information, the vaccine is not going to be a true, I should say, they never said their vaccines were not going to allow you to catch the infection nor give the infection. So we're really living in a time where the grassroots information, the people that are in the hospitals and things of that nature are giving a much different report than the mainstream media. And that's very disturbing, in my opinion.
To say the least. What is on the horizon as far as the increase of or settling of these cases goes? We're seeing, of course, it's projected that of course, I think you mentioned Missouri, they have had a significant increase in cases. We're getting ready to have this summer, and the world is what we're seeing on social media as opening up. Yes. So what would you say is on the horizon as far as an increase, a steady increase, a significant increase? What would you say we should expect this summer?
Well, I have to tell you, based on my research and my assessment of things, I am concerned that it's going to be an extremely great curve of increase in the number of cases, not only in this country, but probably anywhere in the world where they're opening up. We're watching basketball games, football season is about to start, baseball games, all of these people in these coliseums and these stadiums, concerts are back, and you see all these people in these, clubs and all these things, close contact. And as a lot of these so-called experts, these physicians around the country are saying that they're expecting this Delta variant to come to this country. The studies that are coming out of India are saying that this has a greater ability to attract itself to the body, meaning the infectivity rate is higher. The medical consequences of catching it seem to be worse than the previous variants. And so we're talking about a reality of not only people being so happy to not being confined anymore, But taking it to another level, because you've been confined so long, I mean, the activity is really just kind of a very fervent reality. And so I'm thinking that the cases are going to spread quickly. People are going to get sick severely. Hospitals are going to be even more overwhelmed than they were before. And if we put an added reality that the vaccinated people are not going to serve any benefit to this reality, although the media is going to continue to say it, and the media is going to continue to press upon the unvaccinated to get vaccinated, we're going to see, in my personal viewpoint, some horrific numbers going into the end of this year. And I believe that what we're seeing right now with just the story out of Missouri, and then of course the other story about the people on the cruise, it's about to go similar to what we saw in the beginning months of this country's part of this pandemic, but I actually think it's going to be worse.
Okay. Well, with that said, Dr. Akili, is vaccination the solution for this COVID problem?
Well, you know, a lot of people may argue that. A lot of people, like the president and his staff, are saying that if we get 70% of the country vaccinated by July 4th, that would represent herd immunity, and that's going to protect the people in the country from going into the fall having, you know, continuing to have a problem with this pandemic. I don't think there's any evidence to prove that. The countries that have shown a good example of what to do in this pandemic have been the ones that represented to their people information, education, and then mandates. Because if you as a lay person don't understand this science that well, then somebody needs to tell you what to do.
Right.
And America, to me, is the perfect example of arrogance, stupidity, and then money over everything else. So everybody that saw what happened with Fauci this week, I mean, how can you have any confidence when this is the man that supposedly was the expert for last year and some months? This was who was leading you. This was who was giving you your information. And now you're second guessing any and everything about him. That is the perfect example of what America represents to the people of this country as well as the world. So those of us that are interested in protecting ourselves, I think we really have to concentrate on the factors. India being one. They had a vaccination program that they instituted in January, and then they wind up having more cases than anybody in the world for a certain amount of time after their vaccination program. If America goes down a similar route, which I believe they are, then this, I believe, will prove that vaccination is not anything what the so-called experts and these pro-vaccine people say it is. The numbers and the reality that we're living right now is going to prove that this is really a lie. And then when we add to that the amount of money that these companies are making, and as I've said previous, the number of billionaires that have been produced from these vaccine companies, I think we'll quickly start to understand that this is about money. And then if you think about these books that are behind me, Medical Apartheid, and other books that give you a history of what has been done to Black, brown, and the poor people of this country, then we have to really come to the conclusion that this is a medical system that we never should have trusted during this pandemic. And the proof is going to show itself. And we really need to start doing something different and trusting someone else.
Yes, sir. Dr. Akili, thank you. We're going to pause for announcements from our sponsors momentarily. Then when we return, we'll have Dr. Akili back on to talk about the U.S. government and the media's push for vaccines while keeping the public blind to possible alternative treatments. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at National Network View. I am Anissa Muhammad with NNVnews.com.
As the U.S. government and mass media push for adults and children to take experimental vaccines, they fail to inform the public of possible alternate, inexpensive treatments.
The Biden administration is making a renewed push for vaccinations. The effort to declare independence from the COVID-19 pandemic is only intensifying with news of the new Delta variant, more contagious, more severe, and experts worry soon to be more prominent than any other variant in the U.S., already accounting for 10% of new cases.
That happened in a relatively short period of time, and it will likely increase significantly beyond that.
Among the biggest concerns, the nearly 56% of Americans who are not fully vaccinated, especially teens and young children.
When you're vaccinated, you serve as a wall, as a barrier to infection coming into your home, into your community. The more of us that can get vaccinated, the bigger of a wall we can build around our children.
But a new poll reveals why some Americans are still slow to get the shot. 37% of those asked point to vaccine hesitancy, but nearly double that number say they faced barriers in trying to get the shot, including difficulty making an appointment or believing they were not eligible.
Joining us again is Dr. Akili with more on this. Dr. Akili, the Final Call News reported that the U.S. government and mass media are keeping the public blind to possible inexpensive treatments for COVID-19, while at the same time pushing for vaccines. Why are they refusing to promote these other treatments or therapies that can fight off this disease?
Yes, I think that speaks directly to the ending of our last segment, and that's about the money that's associated with these vaccines. Mm-hmm. Because we can start with, the treatments that are pretty cheap, but let's start with the ones that are free, right? Like the sun. There are, some scientists that are saying that you can get vitamin D directly for the sun. And there are, of course, many reports from all over the world, many different scientists that are coming to the conclusion that having a low vitamin D level greatly increases your chances for catching this infection. So getting out and getting some sunshine is just about you finding the time and making the decision to do so. Secondly, everybody eats. And so if we were to promote vitamin C rich foods, vitamin D rich foods, zinc rich foods, quercetin rich foods, these are things that we are sure help benefit the immune system. So yes, we could say that costs, but that's not a separate cost. That's your food, your daily intake of food, which should be healthy. And then, of course, many of us have heard about ivermectin, a medication that's been around for a long time. It has not been used for viral infections, but this is the reality of how medicine works. Sometimes we'll find a medication that has a treatment that we'll usually use it for because it's a side effect. For instance, the minoxidil that a lot of people use for growing of hair, that originally was a heart medication. And people that were using it, especially women, were finding themselves having hair growing in places that they weren't used to. And so that's how it was changed and it became a hair medication. And so that's what happened with ivermectin. These people were seeing that it was working. And we're not talking about one or two doctors like the one that went in front of Congress. We're talking about many physicians all over this country and all over this world, a very cheap medication, a medication that does have a few side effects that you have to worry about. But in essence, I think the conclusion is that this government and these pharmaceutical companies knew that the people of this country and the world were in a position of panic, and fear was the button to press to maintain them in that fear. And so they knew that it was a huge chance to make a lot of profit. And of course, with vitamin D, vitamin C, other food products, and ivermectin, there wasn't going to be a big upside. And so that's the decision to push the things that they thought were the best. And those were the ones that were going to fill their pocket and not change the public in any way, other than putting them subjugated to what we see now, and that is a pro-vaccine campaign.
Mm. Now, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, in his July 4, 2020 message, The Criterion, warned the people not to take these experimental vaccines for COVID-19 and said that there were 14 therapies in the world today. What exactly is a therapy?
Well, a therapy is something that can be instituted in a problem, and we're talking about a person that can either benefit by relieving some of the symptoms or solve this problem. And so, of course, there are many therapies around the world. There have been therapies in a lot of different countries that we have the ability to study what those therapies have done, what their side effects are, and how much they actually improve the people that were taking them. And so those are many. The ones I just finished mentioning, there's colchicine, there is, certain foods that they use around the world, teas. So there are therapies that come from, of course, different cultures and come from other countries and their pharmaceutical industries. One that I could mention is like Cuba and their use of alpha interferon, a solution that isn't very costly, but very effective. And so when you go and you study the fact that Cuba has been using this for 30 years with great benefits. And matter of fact, the latest study that I read about Cuba and their alpha interferon that they use in their country for a certain period of time, I would say within the last few months, probably a half of a year, anybody that came to the country that was suspected to have COVID or had any symptoms, they were put on alpha interferon for 10 days before they could enter the country. And if you look at Cuba's numbers, they have some of the best statistics since this pandemic started than anybody on the planet. And so we're talking about therapies that have proven effective, therapies that aren't very expensive. And so why did America and many of these other governments decide to spend billions of dollars? And probably at the end of it, when it's all said and done, it'll probably be trillions of dollars on vaccines when we have all these other cost-effective things and things that are easily to get to the people. We pass that up for vaccines and this quick production of them in many factories around the world.
Now, you mentioned Cuba. Why would America, if this is so deadly and so serious globally, and Cuba has a possible solution, why would America continue to blockade Cuba, depriving American citizens of the proven therapies for COVID medicines that would combat this disease altogether?
Yeah, so, I think the best answer for that question would be going back and listening to the criterion from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, July 4th, 2020, where he spoke of the reason that he prayed for our God that we serve to punish basically Florida because of the way that the Cubans in Florida have been a proponent of the suppression of Cuba as a country with all the embargoes and things of that nature. And so I'm saying that because we have to put things in its proper context, right? We have to put in context that we're dealing with a plague and we're dealing with the divine destruction of America. And if people don't put it in that context, then you really don't have it in the right context. So as a physician, I have to say that, because it's my responsibility to put God first before what it is that I've been gifted to do. And so when you put things in the context of the fact that America is in in Allah's eyesight for divine destruction, then we can also put in context why America has been the number one country with deaths, with cases for majority of this pandemic. And we're looking at countries like China, India, that have many, many more people. They're in 1 point something or 2 billion people, whereas we're only 350 million, I think, and that's pushing it. So when the minister said that he wanted Allah to prove not only who he is, but to put something on Cuba, it goes to the fact that the imposter Jews, those people that claim to be Jews who really are not Jews, who really are the synagogue of Satan, as scripture describes them, these people have suppressed everything good in Cuba. And my personal viewpoint of all of those actual facts is that if we were to allow the reality of how good Cuba's medical system to be popular and the general public had that type of information, then people would probably pay a little more attention to Cuba and the good things that are coming out of Cuba, and then wouldn't pay attention to this propaganda that's being put on them because of the good things that Castro did. And so it's a pretty convoluted question, but I think ultimately that is the reason. There is Jewish, I should say imposter Jews,
right,
that have become billionaires with a lot of these companies that are producing vaccines. That's not a mistake. We have been told year after year that Jews don't have power. Well, why is it that every time somebody that has so-called fame mention anything about Farrakhan or Jews, do the Jews put pressure on them to change their statements? See, these things that we're seeing stop the perpetuation of these lies, especially that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is anti-Semite. These people that I'm talking about, these imposter Jews, they are not Semites. And then lastly, I'll say that when we are talking about something like Juneteenth that just passed us,
yes,
and we had a president to sign that into a federal law, that's the type of appeasement that they do for Black people, because there's no substance to it. That's not going to improve our income status. That's not going to improve our ability to get home loans. That's not going to improve our ability to get school loans. So even though we've had an increase in Black people going to college, especially Black colleges, a lot of them won't get loans to be able to go to college. It's not going to stop the police brutality. It's not going to stop us from getting freedom, justice, and equality. I should say it's not going to promote us getting freedom, justice, and equality. Mm-hmm. And so the imposter Jews have set up a reality in this country where they force themselves to get the benefits. And we continue to fall for these okie dokie things that are just symbol without any substance. Mm-hmm. I apologize for the length of that, but that was a very, very serious question.
That was a very thorough explanation and answer to that question. We're going to pause right here for announcements from our sponsors. After the break, managing our stress and immune health to combat viruses with Dr. Akili will be up. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App NNV News.
Asiatic Minds, online education, helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness as well as the greatness of our people. And upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. Classes begin September 1st. To enroll, visit AsiaticMinds.com.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
Greetings from National Network View. This week's Final Call cover story headline is dedicated to a champion in the liberation struggle. as Africa and the Black world are honoring the late Kenneth Kaunda, a hero of the struggle to free the motherland, a longtime statesman and leader in efforts to move Africa forward. Zambia's founding president recently departed this life at age 97. This remembrance and tribute includes a special message by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan regarding one of the giants of Africa. This FCN volume number 38 edition middle page article is entitled, "The Judgment of Allah Has Entered America." To read more, subscribe to finalcalldigital.com and tune into the all-new Final Call Radio. This is the nnvnews.com Final Call cover report.
Please make sure you leave your comments and questions in the comment section below. Follow us on Facebook, National Network View, and make sure to check us out on Twitter as well, National Network View. This is Sergio Gutierrez with National Network View, signing off.
The conversation about maintaining a strong immune system has always included which foods to eat and which foods to stay away from. But what about the impact of the information we consume mentally?
Cramming for a test? Trying to get more done than you have time to do? Stress is a feeling we all experience when we are challenged or overwhelmed. But more than just an emotion, stress is a hardwired physical response that travels throughout your entire body. In the short term, stress can be advantageous, but when activated too often or too long, your primitive fight or flight stress response not only changes your brain, but also damages many of the other organs and cells throughout your body. Your adrenal gland releases the stress hormones cortisol, epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, and norepinephrine. As these hormones travel through your bloodstream, they easily reach your blood vessels and heart. Adrenaline causes your heart to beat faster and raises your blood pressure, over time causing hypertension.
Dr. Akili, welcome back. Thanks for joining us one last time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
As we saw in the clip, we were looking at the effects that stress has on the human body. Does stress really and truly affect the immune system?
Absolutely. The stress and its long-term effect on the body is very similar to overworking anything else, right? You buy a brand new car and they give you the instructions on when to get the oil changed, when to rotate your tires, check the water, other things of that nature. And you just get it in every day and drive it as hard as you can, never check any of those things. That car is going to wear out quite fast compared to the person who does all those things and drives it more moderately. These bodies are made to work perfectly. And unfortunately, most of us don't eat the right foods, don't get enough rest, don't drink enough water. And when we talk about stress and those hormones that clip was talking about cause everything to be in high overdrive. And so if you're not eating the right food, you don't have the right nutrition. You're not drinking enough water, so the body's dehydrated. Toxic from bad things, bad environment. And then you add stress on top of that, the body's deteriorating pretty quickly. And that's why these medical problems can occur or sometimes predate the actual stress, and the stress will make those medical problems worse. But if we balance the stress in our lives with those good things, like turning off the television and doing some other positive things and eating correctly, exercising and getting some sunshine and making sure you're meditating and making sure your rest is adequate, that gives the body a chance to repair and to heal these things that could be damaged by stress. And then you can continue to maintain a good balance. And that way stress doesn't necessarily deteriorate the body.
Now, recently I read that when we're stressed, the immune system's ability to fight off antigens is reduced. What does that mean?
Well, you know, if we were to use an example of going to a major store in a big warehouse and you have a number of security guards that are responsible for maintaining, a certain decor in this place. And let's say that there's a fight that started in the grocery section of this big warehouse place. Mm-hmm. And a few of the security guards go to make sure that whatever that situation happened, they diffuse it, stop it, get back order. And then another fight starts on the other side in the electronics department. And then there's another fight in the automobile section, and there's another fight by the registers. Eventually, you don't have enough security guards to be able to diffuse every single situation. And so when we're talking about a stressful situation in the body, our stress hormones, as the clip just showed, will increase the heart rate, will decrease the blood flow to certain organs because they're not involved in taking care of the body. When the body's in a fear, in a state of stress, it's really looking to try to defend itself. So certain organs get more blood flow, some organs get less, but we're still talking about the inability of the body to be able to take all care of all of these different problems. And then the antigen, meaning something from outside of the body that could cause harm, comes into the body, and all of your security guards are in these different organs trying to keep them alive. And now this infection or this antigen comes in the body, and it has the ability to do a lot more harm than it would if your body was at its peak ability to fight it. And so that is kind of an analogy on why the stress can increase your chances of being infected with like a situation we're right now in the pandemic, or just antigens in period, anything that can come into the body and cause harm.
Mm-hmm. That was a great analogy that you used there, but I have a different question now. Yes. So stress can also damage your body's own cells and even trigger responses from your immune system, including elevating inflammation, which can make you more susceptible to viruses and infections. What would you recommend that we do daily to reduce our stress levels?
Well, the first suggestion that I make to everybody is you have to keep your thoughts correct. And so, start your day with the God that you serve. It doesn't make a difference what I call him. It makes a difference what you call him. And so if you start your day with that being, that superior, greater creature, then you will have that remembrance come to your mind all day, just like listening to your favorite song in the morning, and then it comes back to your mind periodically through the day. If you start there and then turn the television off and listen to it sometimes, but not all day, every day, because this American media inundates us with the fear factor. Because here we are in the middle of a pandemic, but in the year of 2020, there still were more people that died from a heart attack than COVID. There were still more people that died in many other medical problems than with this pandemic infection. So why did we not put things in its proper perspective? It was a potential ideology from the beginning of what was going to be done, because a lot of these things that have happened were predicted. And so we have to stay in control. The way to stay in control is to make sure that the information that's coming into you is quality enough for you to make the right decision. And so if you start with your thoughts and keep them positive and stay in control of your thoughts and don't let somebody control you and manipulate you with fear, then it will be more likely that you can keep your thoughts on what to buy when you go to the grocery store and what to put in your refrigerator and what to cook, and then taking some time to get some exercise, taking some time to do the things that promotes your good health, rather than being stifled by fear, which is what fear does. It puts you in a state of non-action, and then you wind up succumbing to that thought process rather than the one that you produce yourself.
Right. Now, I know you stress unplugging from our electronic devices. Anything else that you would suggest that we unplug from to help reduce our stress levels?
Well, I think in general, a time like we're in right now, the minister described in the criterion that sometimes God will put you in a state of solitary confinement. Sometimes he'll put you in a state of being separated from whatever to help you see who supports you, who really has your back, Who are your true friends? Who has checked on you during this pandemic? When you're going through a difficult situation, who's there to support you? And so I think it's very important for us all to take the time that we have right now. Yes, things are starting to so-called go back to normal, but if you're still protecting yourself, take an inventory of the blessings that you've gotten from your Creator and show that gratitude and thankful by being prayerful, and then using that type of energy to plot out where you're going to go from here. Because although we're looking at the divine destruction of America, and we're looking at the unraveling of America, we're looking at the fighting of different aspects of this government and this country against each other, which is going to make it implode even faster. Sure. We, you and I, should be plotting what we're going to do to come out of this. Mm-hmm. Because the scripture says, come out of her, my people, so that you don't partake in her plagues and her tribulations. Well, that scripture, in our understanding and what the minister is teaching us in the Nation of Islam, is that specifically is talking to Black people. So coming out of her is getting your mind in tune with what God is teaching you. And a good story for all of you to go read is the one of Moses and the children of Israel. And look at the way that there were people that were afraid to go into the new land because of the giants that were there. But it was the Joshua generation. And the minister has taught us it's not necessarily the age, it's the mentality of the Joshua generation. They were eager to get something new. They were eager to leave the old slave, post-slavery traumatic syndrome reality alone for a new reality. No matter how difficult that may be, it's better than where we are and where we have been. And if we start thinking from that perspective, then I think our future is going to be beautiful. But for those of us that can't let go of our slave master and their children, it's going to be like holding on to the rail of a sinking ship.
Great analogy. Thank you, Dr. Akili, for your insight. Later on, I expect that you'll have the Ultimate Wellness Group. Can you give us some information on how we can view that discussion?
Yes, ma'am. Well, today on the Ultimate Wellness Group Transformation Tuesday on the THEE, the Ultimate Wellness Group on Facebook, and the Ultimate Wellness Group on YouTube, we will be having part 2 of our conversation, Dianetics, the effective way to improve your mental health. And so I'll have 3 guests, and we'll be talking about our experience with the Church of Scientology and their technology Dianetics. And we'll be talking about why the minister sent us there and what type of benefits we have gained from that. And we'll be answering questions from the participants that were in the program for part 1. So please join us for part 2 this evening, 8 o'clock Eastern time. And I think you'll enjoy it. Come on in, learn a little something, ask a few questions. We appreciate and love having you there.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to hearing more from you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for joining us today and tuning into National Network View News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, NNV News. This is Rosalind Parks for National Network View News. Good night.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.